Hey, how y'all doing today? Let's do it to it. Okay, the section that we're entering in is the lack of patience. This is what Jeremy Silman says when about it, and I want to read to you some words of wisdom. When you're doing well, it's important not to allow undeserved counterplay. If your advantage is dynamic, then rush and defeat your opponent are basically, he says, basically club. Just basically, as I like to say, with horses, trample, go boom right through them, and then over and over again. But if your advantage in the imbalance is static, which means static is more based on space, more based on superior pieces, and more based on better pawn structure, etc., then you can't be really aggressive. You have to be patient and build up for your aggression. Along towards making your opponent helpless, which in turn lets you reel in a point without any necessary advantage that your opponent has against you. At times, the decision is about your playing strength, and or comfort level you can handle, and what is too hot for you to handle or too much. You sometimes, if you kind of get a little too extended in one area, your opponent will take advantage of that, which equals counterplay. And so what you have to always be on the lookout is not allowing your opponent to get counterplay on you. And this is a game that applies to not letting your opponent have counterplay. We're going to be putting it out right now. Get the name in, and then we'll start into it. So just bear with me with writing the name, because I want to be really thorough. So if you would like to later on look it up, you will have a thing to put into your startup engine to look at it. Make sure that I have this right. Perfect. Name's perfect so far. Sometimes some of the spelling I spell it wrong, and I don't want to do that. I want you to be able to look it up if you wanted to. Okay, perfect. Now let's do it to it. Okay, I think White's going more towards an English defense here. G6. Oh, they're doing the snake variation of the English. Interesting. That's kind of a tricky line. It's more of a tactical. You're taking the center with the bishops, not pawns. Black castles. Knight f3. Oops, not bishop. Knight f3. d6, and then castles. And so it's kind of like, if you notice, why it's called the snake is the pawn structure looks, oops, hold on, it's the pawn structure, looks very familiar to a serpentine setup. That's why it's called the serpentine, the snake, the great snake variation. And so d4 castles, and e5, d4, knight bd7. Oh, it transposed into the King's Indian Fianchetto Classic. Interesting. Boy, that changed really quick after that move, after e5. It shows you how fast an opening can transpose into something altogether different without in a couple moves. So don't always get too attached sometimes to certain openings because it can instantly go boom and you're changed. It's a changed one. So b3, rook e8, bishop a3. This takes advantage of target. Queen a5. The queen takes advantage of an unprotected piece. Queen c1, and then with one move, white guards both of the pieces. a4, that attacks a knight. Knight e2, and then d5, and now we're kind of headed towards more of a weird advanced French for black, which is a reversed advanced French, if there's such a thing. So 12, d4, bishop d6. And so what basically white's trying to do is, if they can get their bishop implanted potentially on e5, this would be a tremendous victory. Bishop f8. Bishop takes. Yeah, this was a huge victory here. Knight takes f. Yes, it's closed, but remember, the bishop for black, the fianchettoed bishop, the dark squared one, was very important to guard these 2 points for entry for white. So white still has their bishop, which it means that white's kingside position is rock solid. So there's really not going to be a much for black to enter the kingside. These 2 points are guarded for white. It's incredible. The change, just a small nuance can really change the whole setup. f3 here. Kind of reminds me of a French, because this is kind of a move. You want to get c5 in for black when white has a e4, and then when white has e5, you kind of want to get the c5 break in. This is kind of a line that sometimes with black and the French, you want to get f6 in to also get a certain type of break in the advanced French. This is very kind of odd to see it for white though. So a unique position for sure. So black just takes it, and then the knight takes. C takes d, b takes c, and then queen to h5 here. They're shifting pieces. They're trying to get the pieces in for an attack. Patience though, patience. And white's just patiently building up. White's not reacting to black's threats. Okay, e1. Now white's fully developed. Rook a d8. You really don't want to have your opponent having a rook on the same file as the queen. It just doesn't feel comfortable. So that's most players don't like that. But sometimes you can stomach it for a while if they can't infiltrate in, which at this point they can't. So bishop takes, king takes, and then c5 here. And white can't, of course, take because of the rook, so it's got to push. So black acquired a victory here. Let me get a drink of water and I'll explain the victory to you. The victory is black has access to e5 and now has access to d4. This is a vital point. These are 2 vital points that knights can basically implant themselves on. So if this one f3 knight were gone, then this knight can implant itself there, and that knight can implant itself there, and they would just be monsters. They would just dominate the board. So that's why d5 was a victory for black. But black's still not out of the woods, so we're not. The game's not over yet. So queen f3, f4, queen g4, e5, queen takes f4, g takes f4, knight h5. Man, white's just steamrolling black. But remember, there's one problem that white has, is this f5, f4 pawn. So what they're basically going to have to do, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to have to play f. Maybe he doesn't have to play. He may not have to play f5. He could play. He could try playing e6 and then crushing open the center that way. And then because he could play here, then if the knight moves, pawn takes, king takes, then f5. I'm still thinking though they're gonna play f5. I still think f5's probably the idea. Okay, so after this move here, I just had to take a look at it. These type of combinations always get me excited here. White has outplayed her powerful opponent, an international master, and has obviously has an obvious advantage over her opponent. The massive center, the extra space that it gives places black in serious trouble at this point. An advantage in space is fully exploited and explored in part 7. We're not in part 7 yet, we're in part 4. So we have a little bit to go. However, there's a tiny problem with f4 and c4 with a big center in general. The player with the larger center has to defend it. If he or she can make it indestructible, then the center rules the day. If the center proves unstoppable, then it will unsustainable, sorry, then it will crumble and the opponent's strategy will win out. Your opponent's strategy will win out. With this guard the center rule in mind, white should look for something that takes care of both c4 and f4. And there's one move, and I want to see if you could see it. Stop now. The move is, I'm not sure if she's going to play it, but the move that would handle that problem is actually rook e4. Since knight to f1 fails to knight to b6, which undermines, so if this move were played here, this move fails to that move, because then you have this is vulnerable for black to take. And even though the knight to g1 allows a rook to be opened onto the pawn, it doesn't handle the whole problematic thing. First f6 might be a better choice for black to be played. White is left with 3 reasonable moves. Knight to e2. Knight e2 is a reasonable move to guard. Knight e2. But he says it gums up white's army, so that's kind of one out of the question. And then after knight e2, f6 gets played at this point. And then knight b3, or b6, rook c1, knight takes d5, double exclam, I mean not double exclam, but exclam in that move. Interesting. So he takes, and then rook takes. Knight c3. Knight takes f4, check. King h1. Rook d6 to go after that pawn. Knight e4. D takes e6, and knight takes c5, rook e6 to e7, and this is actually considered an equal position at this point. Nobody is winning or losing at this point. So knight d2 defends both. Knight d2 defends both spots at the same time. So let's go back to this move here. Knight d2 defends the c pawn here, and the rook defends f4 at the same time. So it's at the same time it appears leaving white with a clear advantage. Perhaps that's true, but it's not easy to prove since the center is so strong to leave alone. Black either breaks it down, breaks it down, or it breaks itself breaks him up. Basically, it defeats him or her. Doesn't matter who it is. As long as the center holds, everything is right as rain. So what black's going to try to do at this point is play g5, and g5's a strong move. Then you take here, rook takes, and we reach a surprisingly complex position. A quick glance at a couple lines will show us that any ultimate truth is very hard for mere mortals to discover. Basically, that was a quote that he quoted. So this is going to be really hard. This is like 1 second your center is rock solid as like a brick. The next moment you're like, oh no, what just happened? And then it's too late at that point. If rook takes, knight takes, rook f5, rook e8, d6, knight g7, rook f2, rook d8, knight c to e4, and then b6, and again we've entered a equal position, another equal position. Or if on move 30 king h3, king g7, knight b5, knight d3. When black is still fighting tooth and toenail for victory here. So we have to come back here, rook f5, king h3, f6, knight e4, rook e8, knight f2 to d2, rook takes f1, rook takes f1, f takes, and then king g4, knight g7, rook b1 to go after this pawn. So the king's attacking here, and the rook's attacking there, the knight's attacking there, so everything's being attacked. b6, king takes g5, rook e5, check, king f4, rook f5, check, king e3, rook h5 to go after the h2 pawn, and still a bit of a mess. The white will never be in any real danger. Is deciding which move to play doesn't trust the basically conglomeration of the pawn center. So you have to figure out which move to play here. Which move? 93, still there's a threat. So knight e2, since the player was actually Pam again. Pam missed the threat of knight b6. She didn't see any reason to play knight to d2. Had she noticed that, I suspected knight d2 would have been chosen. If she had noticed that, she would have probably noticed knight d2 is actually the best move. It looks good, it looks safe, and it would have taken a very strong player to have seen that black actually has a way to rock the boat in that line. It turns out she played the third possibility, which is actually knight to g5. This is the third possibility. This appears to be the best. Nevertheless, she didn't see why it was the best move, and as a result, she probably had done better with knight to d2. So this is not a bad move. Pam didn't spot knight to d2. But this move isn't bad either. It's not bad at all either. It's just there's drawbacks to every single move. You can't get away from there not being a drawback. This appears to be the best move. Nevertheless, okay, we already did that. Knight to b6. h6 was a playable move here. The knight g to e4 would be played, and then knight b6. And now knight d2 keeps a safe lock on everything while knight takes hold on. Well, knight takes c5, knight takes c4, and then knight b7, rook b8, knight c5, and rook e to c7, knight there to e4, and looks strong as well. And that's actually really a powerful move sequence now that I look at it. We have 5 to 4, we have one passed pawn, everything's supported. There is a potential check here on b2. I really like white in that scenario. But let me see here. She kind of went awry with this move here. Knight g e4. This was a mishap. Shockingly, by the fact that she missed, she's shocked by the fact that she missed knight to b6. She lost confidence and began to basically bow to the will of her opponent, whoever it is. And so after this move here, which I would have thought about, f5 is an exclam move. You have to kind of, at this point, you got to go all in, because you're not going to really be able to cement the c pawn anymore. It's done. It's overdone. Game, set, match. You now have to full out counterplay, otherwise you're going to go down. And that's what f5 does. Knight takes. F takes g. F takes g, and now you have this massive double 2 pawns, passed pawns. This is killer here. This is like, whoa, hello. And they're on the 5th rank. You gotta be kidding me. That's super duper power. And it always brings a smile to one's face when that happens. Knight f7. Rook b8. And then d6, and it's like, wow, that is power. This is just a power move, because what's going to happen next is e6 is going to be played, and then these two pawns are just going to storm the center. It's going to be over but the crying. That's power. But you can't lose your cool. Whatever you do, you can't lose your cool. If this were played, let's say that black took here, right? Which probably would be a better move sequence. I'm thinking, what would be the best move here? This one puzzles me. Yeah, I think taking here would actually be better. And then if you take here, knight comes crushing in, and you get the two pawn advantage anyways. Yeah, this is actually, that's really strong, because the idea is it attacks the knight and this is attacked. So if the knight goes back here, this rook falls. Youch. Youch. So I now understand why that's so winning. Youch. That's gotta hurt. That would be the shock of the life for black if white dropped that on black. Black's face would turn from a smile to a frown, because they'd realize, uh-oh, this did not turn out the way I wanted it to. She still has one passed pawn, but on the other side, she would have had two passed pawns. So you got to see the theory of two weaknesses comes into play in a lot of games, where these two passed pawns in the prior line of f5, and after this, these two pawns end up becoming two weaknesses that black can't deal with. Two of these, there's no way they can deal with it. So, but one weakness they can deal with. Like, this could be locked down with a knight coming in, potentially. A knight coming in here could potentially lock it down. But with two pawns, you would have e6 in reserve to kick that knight out. But now that there's a pawn on f7, that ability to play that is no longer plausible. So rook c8. White is still doing very well, but she didn't anticipate this complexity, and she soon lost a lot. She lost, I believe, in this one here, but it was panic at this point. Because what happens is she saw that her rooks were skewered here, but that can easily be handled with e2 to e4. This actually move here is a lot potentially stronger, because what this does is you're able to go after this pawn here, and what could happen is you can support the pawn there. You can also come in here and then come in that way as well. You have this, you have these 2 points to enter into. So you always got to be on the lookout for the strongest move. Never be satisfied for second best. And then d6. So there you go. Now you see the power of this knight being there. It double protects this. Also, this protects that, and that protects these 2 points. At the same time, what it would do is by taking on b7, it would kick the rook out on d8, and then a fork would potentially come into the light of day. White and offers white a safe plus, but white has still has to figure out what more to do to activate her pieces at that point. So after this, f5 was played here. D6. This is an interesting counterplay. You got to give Pam the counterplay stuff. Rushing ahead first, even more complex, even into more complexity. She should have put the brakes on basically, and solidified her position with this one move. Just this one move. Just calm down. Remember, you have this move at all times. No panic. So when you see a move, you start getting attacked. Don't go into as I like to say, fight or flight mode. Slow down. See how you can solidify your position, and then push forward. And then if knight f6, this is an exclam move situation for sure. King h1, knight g4. Now d6 is a good move. Knight g takes e5, f takes, rook. Oops, that was a mouse slip on my part. Rook takes, knight takes, and then rook e1, and knight c6, knight b5. And black will be struggling to grind out a draw here. This would be a big time struggle because you have a knight. Once this knight gets involved, you'll be able to at least trade off one of the knights for the knights, and then this knight will hold the pawn down while this rook comes in and just basically starts Pac-Man eating all the pawns, as we call it. So knight b6 were played. d7. Knight takes d7. Knight d6. Rook takes c. Knight takes. Knight c5. Rook c1. She could have put her fear to rest with one move. Knight f6. Knight f6 is actually a game changer at this point. And after takes, king c2, king at h1, king f7, and then rook to c1 here. Rook takes, rook takes. b6. When rook e1 exclam gets played, and even though when white can dream of victory, sadly the world was spinning, and clearly through there was something later on that happened. Sometimes when we get into a position where we get really panicky, we lose track on what matters here. And if the king had taken here, the rook could have actually slipped in behind and started doing a lot of checks. And if this were played, then you have that. And then if this, then you can come over here. If here, then you come there, and then at this point, now you're attacking. The knight has to retreat, and you could actually now come in with check, and when the king comes up, you come here, and there's really no way to stop. That's going to lose a pawn. So you just have to be calm as a cucumber and not allow your position to fall apart. Knight takes f, rotates f here, double question mark, a blunder. Simply playing king to h1 was quite safe and enough for the victory, basically. And at this point, king takes, knight f6, king f7, and it turns out that g5 on move 26 back here. I'm sorry about that. One second. Move g5, even though thought the best in the position wasn't the right move for the particular player at the particular time. The less tactical knight d2 would probably have served her better. I know that claiming someone would do better to avoid the best move sounds not right. But if you aren't able to basically tame the resulting position, then it's best to place something within a person's like positional play. Like Karpov knew his limit. Gary's an attacker, so Gary probably would have liked more like rook to g5. I'm not speaking for Karpov. If Karpov would have liked rook knight to g2 or d2, knight d2. But I'm just saying though, knight d2 is more of a positional play, building up, getting ready to then go out after your opponent. Knight g5 is more of an attacker's opening, attacker's play. You're basically saying, I'm coming full throttle with rockets and, as I like to say, all guns blazing into a room. And one would be setting up a perimeter and then rushing the room, and that type of a positional play. So we have to always remember what is the best for our play style. Okay. Another way of putting it, the best move isn't the best move if you don't know why it's the best move. So that's the thing. The moral here is, when possible, try to enter lines that you feel can handle that situation you're personally comfortable with. Your style, our particular situation. For example, if I could take a small but solid and safe position plus versus a grandmaster like he says Shobalov, man, would I love to have that type of a position. Or enter a tactical motif that might very well offer much more, I would go for the simple but solid, safe opportunity, unless I was able to convince myself that the complexities were definitely good for me. That I would that I had enough time left on the clock to do the positional justification, and or that I could handle it properly without basically sinking under the maze of variations. On the other hand, if I felt that entering a tactical firestorm was the only correct way to handle the position, I would happily enter it. You have to do what the board tells you to do. You have to do what the board tells you to do, my friends. So you can't always just, even if you are a positional player, if the board tells you to go all out, trust me, Karpov would. He prefers positional play, but if there's an attack, if the board says attack the king side and there's a positional move, trust me, he's going to go for the attack. I can't speak for Karpov, but I'm just saying though, I would go for an attack even if I was a positional player and I had the opportunity. But you have to remember, who are you playing, and are you comfortable in that situation of play? And that's just something you have to ask yourself. Does even this has tons and tons of tactics in it? Do I feel comfortable enough to go down that line and risk that my opponent will outcalculate or out tactic me? And you have to say, if you feel up to it, then more the merrier. Go all in, my friends. On a high level, on higher level, patience and the avoidance of enemy counterplay is the major part of a technical repertoire. This kind of reference is to enter or this kind of resources to enter anything that even remotely risky, that when possible a technical winning position, even if it's so. Basically, what Jeremy Silman's saying here, I don't think I read that exactly right. He's saying that you have to, when you get to a certain level, like Grandmaster levels, you have to keep the tension, hold the tension at the right time, release the tension. You have to sometimes build up, even though you want to attack, you have to build up. And then at the right moment, then let go. If you think of it as a rubber band, you're pulling the rubber band back, 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 back. And then at the right moment, you let the rubber band go and it goes really far. That's kind of the same type of thing. And sometimes you get a winning position. As demonstrated in our next example, this is known as cat and mouse. The cat and mouse is when you can checkmate your opponent in 3 moves, but you extend it out to 20. That's cat and mouse. Sometimes a position looks like it's cat and mouse, but you're kind of like lost in the maze, and you kind of you didn't spot a mate in 3. That actually sometimes does happen. That there's mate in 3s that are missed, but the person sees a mate in 20, and so they'll go down a mate in 20. Because that's what they can see. And so some games look cat and mouse. Some players love to play cat and mouse, which I don't really prefer that, because you never know when the mouse will or your player will be able to escape. And so why if you see a mate in 3, yes, you can kind of extend it out and make the game not fun for your opponent. But why would you want to do that when you have a sure win? I guess I don't mean to say but I'm just thinking about just go for the win, basically. If I could say, just go for the win. It's not worth it, because you know what? At the end of the day, you both want to walk away as friends, not you don't want your opponent being upset with you. Let's just say it's about the win. I know some players are like, yes, it's about the win. I understand. My opponent beat me really bad last time, so I want to take advantage of this and return the favor. Don't be like that. No. You remember, the Lord, it was never like that with us, so we shouldn't be like that with others. Just win the game, move on, talk about the game. Maybe you can even show your opponent where you could have done a cat and mouse, but you didn't do a cat and mouse because there was a mate in 6. And then you both walk away as friends, because on the board, it's just, it's just how it is. You have to, sorry about that. Oops. Yikes. Sorry about that. I don't know how I was going to move back. You walk away as friends and then you guys can learn more from each other. It's that cool. Okay. Let's see how we go. Here, okay, perfect. So far, so good. So c3. This is if this move gets played here. Boom. You can come back, and if that's played, then the bishop can retreat back there. It kind of, and then it also allows white to play d4, and then get a really massive center. It's an interesting prophylactic move. So d4, that's a playable move. C takes d, C takes d, then a6. So a6, bishop a4, b5, bishop c2. Okay, queen g4, bishop g4, bishop e3, e6, h3, knight h5, our bishop h5, knight c3. So white's developing, getting full development. Black's behind in development. Knight e7, bishop e7, d5, e takes d5, knight takes d5, castles, knight f4, trying to get this bishop off the board. Bishop takes, queen takes, rook e8, bishop b3. So now the bishop's putting a ton of pressure. Rook c8, rook ad1. This is lining up the rook with the queen. Knight e5, queen e2, knight d7, and then f6, or f3, queen c7, queen f2, to get off of the rook, queen b8, and then rook d2. They have to hold this pawn. Knight c5, bishop d5 here. Bishop f8, and then if you're thinking about this, the knight would love to be able to implant itself there, even at the cost of exchanging his powerful light square bishop off. The knight would jump in more than happily. Bishop d4, and white's not going to trade off the bishop because for the knight, because his bishop guards the pawn. Okay, 24. Let's see, bishop, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, knight d7, queen g3, rook c6 to guard the pawn, knight e3. The idea is to come into e5, queen d8, rook f, d1. Now the pawn's going to come under pressure. Rook e6, king h1, and then h6. The idea is potentially this gets off of the dark square. It's another prophylactic move. Knight d6, or d5 again. Rook e8, And then a3 here. Rook c8. Bishop c3 with the idea of trying to come in and attack there. Queen g5. If the queens come off the board, all of the hope of an attack for white basically disintegrates. Knight c5. f5 is also a playable move. This is also playable if you wanted to play that. h4. Queen g6. Knight f4 attacks the queen. Queen h7. Queen g3. Now the queen comes back in with great ferocity. Knight d7. Black just has to basically wait around while white is the one that's building up everything. a5. Black has a horrible position. His d-pawn is obviously a target, but his queen locked in on h7. His pawn, like bishop, is serving a pure defensive function. His king is being eyed by our king side is being eyed by the queen, knight, and bishop. And white enjoys space advantage in the center and on the king side. Worst of all, black has nothing to attack, no counterplay of any sort. He just has to sit there and wait for the hammer to fall, as I like to say. In such a situation, many experienced players begin a cat and mouse, and they go they go out of their way to avoid any counterplay, and they refuse to accept any enemy pieces. Instead, they slowly improve their pawns and pieces until everything is optimally placed, and then and only then they take aim at the targets and enjoy the victory of that. What am I reading? Jeremy Silman's How to Reassess Your Chess, 4th edition. It's a really good one. I know I sometimes have to focus down because some of this I'm running through in my mind when I'm reading it. I'm actually looking at all the positions. So I may be looking at a book, but it's all the boards in our head. So winning a pawn in this fashion adds to the overall advantage and lets the enemy know that he is not lost in the middle game, but also he's lost in the middle game, and also in the end game. Yeah. So what you have to do is cat and mouse. If it's not a bad thing. If you're in a very static position, cat and mouse does have to happen sometimes, which you're optimizing your position. I don't know why they call it cat and mouse. I think they should just say you're optimizing your pieces and your position, because true cat and mouse is basically you have the opportunity, basically, I said basically again, you have the opportunity to end the game, but you choose to prolong it. That's cat and mouse. So I would say that it's not cat and mouse. This is just optimizing your position. So yeah, I think there's a difference between that. One is I guess taking total advantage of the position, which means you're maximizing it. I'm going to say that again. And and one of them is you're just making the game not fun for your opponent. And either way, I know the game's about checkmate. I understand, but be polite about it. Win and move on. And then you both can go over your games and both have fun at the very end. That's the whole part of chess, is to you're there to help build chess, not to break it down by cat and mouse in the game. But that's just my opinion. Now after you've basically devoured the material, and you have an advantage after you've optimized your position, you've seen targets that are there, you take them, you optimize in the end game, you already have your opponent in the middle game because you outplayed them. But that doesn't mean you're going to get checkmate. You're not going to get mate in the middle game. You just have a better position, you slowly improve, and then you win. Okay, Winning a, let's see, let me see, where did I, okay, doing well, allow your opponent, okay, you don't allow your opponent to have any activity. This kind of total domination doesn't occur too often, and when it does, some players prefer to seek ways to end things a bit faster. That's me. But the cat and mouse idea makes good sense since it allows the stronger side to keep the opponent completely under wraps. I don't like that. To avoid any and all tricks and to pretty much guarantee victory at some point down the road. Also, keep in mind that the defending side will be not basically miserable and not having fun throughout this process and will sometimes just resign so they don't have to continue looking at a disastrous position in front of them. So sometimes, I guess if you want to push your opponent to resign, you can do that, but just go for mate. Get it over with, because if you have a long tournament, let's say you have 1 or 2 games right after that, you don't want to be exhausted. Just go KO and move on. And it also is a sign, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, of a classy player, but that's just me. I'm not going to judge other players if they do cat and mouse. But I'm just saying, though, for me, that's, as like Joshua says, and Patrick Henry, you know what I mean? All those great speakers. Yeah, Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's kind of, as for me as a chess player, I would I would like to promote chess. So winning fast and then showing your opponent later on how they can improve is promoting chess and the love of chess. And so, yeah, we gotta get back in the game. I get a little too adamant about those type of things. Sometimes they slightly irritate me when opponents can actually win faster, but you can't let that happen. It's just part of the game and personality of a player too. White prefers to improve the position of his rook. To be quite honest, this move here, taking d6, was much stronger. So even Jeremy Silman agrees that White could have finished off Black quicker. This would have been a quicker KO. Was stronger, but why trade a rook for the basically paralyzed bishop? And why take any chances whatsoever when you have such a good position? And basically, I guess, again, you can slowly but steadily squeeze your opponent into oblivion, I guess. Is kind of a fashion that some players like to do. So after rook takes d6 here, bishop takes d6, this is the line that they're going to go. Yeah, it seems like a bad move, but actually this isn't a real bad move, because what's happening is the position's about to collapse for black, because you're thinking about it as that potentially a knight could come in, and then a knight could come in there, and then you have a fork, and which is very beautiful. And there's no bishop guarding that anymore. There's no bishop guarding this weak g7 point. So that just looks very tantalizing when this knight moves, and if somehow you can draw this queen out somewhere, just get it out of the way, this point will end up becoming a checkmating square. So it's just a preferential of a player. Okay, let me get a drink. All right. Okay, there we go. Let's take a look here at move 29. If black were to play f6, there's actually 4 moves that black can play, and I'll get each one of them put in so that we can then I won't lose my spot at that point. Hold on. King h8, and then rook takes the bishop, giving back the exchange. So let's see, let's go down the f6 line. After that, rook takes f6, and that's just a disastrous position. It's very awful for a player to have to go down that type of end. That would not be fun. No, 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 no. You're basically 2 pawns up. Or are you 3 pawns? Let me see. Two, 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 two. You're 3 pawns for the... No, you're 2 pawns for the piece. And your opponent has no counterplay. Yeah, this is resignable. Hey, player, okay, how's it going, bro? Okay, now let's go to c4, knight c4. See, you might have that rook. This is funny. The knight d5. This is cute. The threat of this move is just so tremendously strong. Saying, really, is that? Do we really want to go down that route? You know, it's kind of like one of those things. King h8, and then knight still to f6. Black can actually resign here. This is an exclam move. Of course, we'll show you if takes here, then there's only one way to stop mate. There's only one way to stop mate. And that loses. So the king actually has to give up the queen. So if like rook comes over here, you just take the there, and then the rook takes here, and the position just collapses with mate. Okay, let's take a look at king h8 now. Bishop takes knight. So this is actually a really strong move too, because again you're threatening to bring the knight in. So knight g6. Oh, sorry, knight g6, not the other way. Hold on, I gotta get rid of that. Had the wrong spot. Knight g6. Takes. And then let me see, where are we at now? Where are we at? What did I miss here? Queen takes e5. I knew there was something. And takes. And then rook takes a6, and it's hopeless for black here too, because there's black still has is still a pawn down, and another pawn basically is gonna collapse. There's no way for black to move here to stop the pawn. Oops, actually, yeah, there's no way for black to move there or there, because the bishop would, the queen would take there, and the queen would take there. So that's going down the board. I'm coming off the board. And then rook c3. B takes rook. And now basically you've given back the material, and you white is still a pawn up. So it's not like it's over at all. Not one bit. Knight d5, and the idea again is you can potentially play your knight in there, up there, and try to dislodge the rook, and then go after this knight if you'd like. It's kind of one of those ideas. f6, that cements the knight permanently. Knight e. This actually will win on the spot. There are many ways to win, but this sequence is by far the most accurate. a5, rook e6, exclam. This sets up for a win with a discovery. Rook a8 has to get the rook out of there. Rook takes e5, exclam. F takes e5, knight g6, king g8, knight takes e5, and the position of the queen plus the unfortunate threat against black king would convince most players to immediately give up, but actually most players wouldn't give up here, surprisingly. They would try to have you prove it, but then that would end in mate. So they might try that, but that would end in mate. So maybe they would give up. Surprisingly, maybe they would just have to give the queen back here and then play there, and then try to hold on. And at this point, I think I would. I don't know if there's really any point. Maybe you could play here, but I'm not sure. I think I would just grab the pawns and then win that way. So that's an interesting continuation. Knight c4. F5 here is a blunder. This is actually not a blunder, but a mistake, because bishop takes, pawn takes, then knight g6, and f4 really does nothing because g4 paints a horrible picture, and black's queen is totally entombed at this point. The rook will decisively enter the position, also along the d file. Yeah. Yep. You got that right. Okay. Rook d1 to d3. Okay. So now we're doing a time. Perfect. Okay, perfect. We'll finish this game up, then I gotta say adieu on this. Rook c6, rook f5, knight e5, knight d5, king h8, and then rook d1. By the way, if you're wondering why black didn't take here, double question mark. That's why. And then the queen gets chomped off the board for good. Rook d1, white would have safely won a pawn with bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes, d takes, and then queen takes e5. But that would have fed black's position a bit and given unnecessary activity to the previously dead, or it's not dead, deactive black's bishop, dark square bishop. A computer, of course, goes crazy over bishop takes e5, but a cat and mouse player would never allow that kind of enemy activity when he or she can pick off enemy pawns in ways that don't allow anything at all to have happen in the position, basically slowly squeezing till the opponent's collapsed. F6, knight b4, bishop, rook b, knight d4. Now it's outposted, and this is actually a very beautiful spot for the knight. If it wasn't that they were doing cat and mouse, it would have been a beautiful spot. Wait a second, did I do that right? Oh, I apologize. Wait, how did? Oops, not d5. Sorry, bishop d4. I knew I had something wrong there. And then now the rook has to fully retreat back. There you go. Now white can win a pawn, a well-earned pawn. Queen g8, knight b4. The knight is no longer doing anything on a6 and rushes back to the center where it can join the rest of the army. Cat and mouse is keeping every piece safe and central placed and protected. I don't know why they shouldn't call it cat and mouse. I think they should call it positional superiority. That would sound more cool, but that's just my opinion. Queen b6, rook c1. Queen b3, rook c1, rook b8. And I would like to let you for a second choose what move white to play. And this isn't an exclam move, but I just want to see what you would think. That you have to think cat and mouse here. So just think, what would a player play that's playing cat and mouse? Basically, they want to relieve all counterplay, and they want to slowly but steadily defeat their opponent. What move would do that for white? I'll be right back. Knight 94 for well, 93 can't be played. 96 is probably what you're thinking. The move that was actually played is 91. Queen E1 and Rook B, but good try on that. Good, really try. B to C8, and then Queen D1. Mentioned earlier, the extra pawn allows White to enter an endgame with full confidence that he or she will be winning. Rook takes, Queen takes, Queen E6. Black can't trade off queens, otherwise Black's lost. So Knight D5. That feels better. Having won the A6 pawn, the knight returns to D5, where it holds the entire board captive. Rook C8, Bishop C3, Rook C5, Queen D1, Queen C8, Knight F4, King H7, Queen B3, Knight C4, Rook C5, Rook D5, Queen E8, Rook takes C5, D takes C5, Queen C2. Even stronger is Knight to G6. Bishop D6 is played, and then A4. Knight E5, Queen D5, which attacks the bishop. However, White chose the method. Method is more than adequate. White's method is more than adequate. And of course, if Knight takes, first of all you take with a pawn. King takes R, Queen takes, and then the bishop falls off the board, and so it's game, set, match. King G8, Queen D3. Slowly but steadily, the queen's coming to the board. Bishop D6. Knight B6 could be played. Rook G6, Queen D7. But the endgame obviously doesn't appeal to him. However, this would have been the wisest course, since leaving queens only highlights Black's inadequacy or vulnerability of the king. So Queen D5 check, Queen F7, Queen A8. So why hey, how you doing? Why trade off when you can basically just slowly but steadily win material, right? Perhaps gaining time on the clock, and perhaps following the old cat and mouse rule that is better to do a maneuver in several moves instead of one, since lengthening the game not only adds the opponent's unfun time, but also weakens his attention, which promotes errors after a while. This so you're basically wearing your opponent down. I guess that's that's kind of what's going on here. Queen F7, Knight E6, Bishop E7, and then G4. There we go. Black's tied up again. Black's tied up again. So White takes some time to defend H5 and improve the position of their king. Knight to E3, Queen D7, King H7, and King to H2, King G8, King H3, and then B4. We're almost, black can't stand the unfun and lashes out. Unfortunately, as is so often the case, this haste decision is their demise at this point. This is the demise of the position. Bishop d4, knight c2. Sometimes it's fun to do that sometimes, to play over the board. Bishop f2. Yeah, you do play. You can play over the board. The knight is suddenly cut off from the rest of the army. So the knight is actually cut off from the rest of the army here. So b3 is what was played to hold the knights basically together. So the queen comes back with check, king h7. Remember, this is cat and mouse, so it's a long, drawn-out game. We're almost done with it, though, because the king is slowly but steadily being undermined, as I like to say. Okay, one sec. Sorry, I need to play here. This will win a pawn. King g8. Queen takes b3. So another pawn falls off the board. 2 pawns in the bank, and black is still helpless. The end is in sight. Hip hip hooray, finally. I can't wait. Queen c4, because it's just sad to see this type of badness that's done to your opponent. I guess if you have to do it, but I don't agree with it. So let me see here. So bishop d6. But if you have to, like, keep pushing to get better, yeah, it is fun. Bishop g. Puzzles are fun, huh? Oops. Bishop g3. Bishop e7. So they're trying to hold on. g3 is actually a blunder, so I have to get this line in. It's a longer game. This allows queen to c8, king h7, knight f8, and then the game's almost over at this point. Check, and if the queen intercepts, that's mate. So if this happens, king comes up, that's checkmate. So it actually sets up for a tactical motif. Yeah, true, very true. I agree with you. You have to, like what Bruce Lee says, you have to always be ready. You have to apply what you know. If see, this I don't think is as strong. King h7, knight f3 was quicker, but why not defend the queen and let black just watch there and just not have fun? Yeah, it does. It does have a really cool front cover. I like I like the how he teaches. And then check, king h, queen d6 again, or d7. f4 could be played here, which is actually a quicker continuation, because then you implant a knight there, and then there's mate. So you have that in the works. It also stops this the bishop from coming back here, because then the same example happens. The knight, we grab it, same situation. So king g8, basically black's just sitting there doing nothing, and yikes, oh yikes. Bishop there takes, and then queen takes, and black was probably relieved to end the game. They resigned here. Okay, we're going to call it on this, but the next section that we're going to be going over inside of the psychology and mental toughness in chess is soft or lazy or soft moves. We're going to be going over that next time, but we're going to rehash what we went over here. Is that sometimes if you can win in like 3 moves instead of 20 moves, win in 3 moves. It's just more professional in my opinion. But sometimes if your opponent thinks you could have made it in 3 moves, but let's say you don't see the mate, that's different because you see a different mate, maybe in mate 6, 7 instead of mate 3. That happens to players as long as you checkmate and you both leave basically happy, and you both can go over into the Skittles room, or they have a room where you can go over your game. Or sometimes if your game's really long and there's nobody around you at the tournament, you can speak lowly, very low voice. Your voice is low so that you don't disturb other players while they're playing, and you can go over the game that way as well. But you have to also keep in mind that we have to play the best abilities, and sometimes what looks like cat and mouse actually isn't. It's you're developing your pieces and you're getting them to their optimum placement, and then you launch your attack. And we got to see from Pam that certain moves, yes, they may be the best, but if it doesn't fit your play style, she played the optimum move, but her play style didn't allow her to use it. And what happened was she got in a tight position and she got nervous, and then her position collapsed. And that's happened to us all. So you know what? You just have to get back up and keep pushing forward. We all fall, but it's the test of a great warrior is how they handle the fall. Do they quit, or does a warrior get right back up and say, "Let's do it again. Let's do it again"? And that's how the great Scott good. they didn't just get good overnight, and it's all about mental toughness. That's what we're going over, and I'll leave with that. I want to thank you all for participating, logging on. Excuse me, tickle the throat, and for sticking on with me. And as we read over this, a lot of the stuff that's coming up, I'm going to be quick about this, is going to be more reading because it's more toughness of the mind. And that's what Bruce Lee was talking about, and what Play OK said about taking what you know and of being able to apply it and being willing to do something with it is vital in a chess player. But one of the most vital choices that we have to make in chess and in life is, what are you going to do with the Lord Jesus Christ? Are you going to receive him as Lord and Savior of your life? Or are you going to reject him? It all comes down to choices, and it's a vital choice that affects your eternal destiny. But remember, when we're studying chess, we have the Team Chess Cruncher motto of, we hang up our coats, we hang up our hats, we sit down and study when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference, my friends. It truly does. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless. And I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, and Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow, and we'll keep pushing forward, having more fun, going over the next section inside the chapter, and improving our mental toughness over and over again. Remember, though, what Hannibal Smith said is, even inside of a random position, my friends, there's always a plan. And when you find it and optimize it, you get to say, I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, 2 thumbs up, hoorah, be blessed. I will see you tomorrow. Keep studying chess, having fun. And remember, Chess Cruncher TV is there for you. And just keep having fun. Okay, be blessed. Bye-bye, team.